Good afternoon and welcome to Link. Mr. Ishmael Reed, thank you so much. Welcome to Link.
Glad to be here, La-Verne.
When this show airs, your play will have been on. When is it open? October 4th.
Yeah, this week.
So, Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, so this is going to come on the same day.
This week it opens up on Friday.
Oh, okay. So we'll
There's a
have been
matinee
on
on Sunday at 3 o'clock.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great.
Yeah.
Terrific. Okay, so the name of your play is The Haunting of Lin-Manuel Miranda. And it's a takeoff on...
it's a rebuttal to Hamilton. Hamilton, the Revolution.
All right. Why are you rebutting this play?
Oh, because it's full of errors.
Okay.
And it's full of that other, thing. These families that are honored in this musical are slave traders, exterminators of Indians who treated their so-called slaves in a cruel manner. But in their time, they posed as abolitionists. So this is a $1 billion production. It's making $100 million a year. And in 10 years, it will have earned $1 billion. We had very little money. And we have already got them to back up. We've already gotten them to back up. So they have another selling pitch.
I don't understand. What do you mean you've got them to back up?
First they said that Hamilton was an abolitionist.
Mm-hmm.
This is ridiculous because he left receipts which show that he sold slaves.
Mm-hmm.
His grandson, Alan Hamilton, says that not only did he own slaves, but he purchased them for others. Hamilton was involved in the slave trade business from the time that he was a youth in the Caribbean. His job then was to groom slaves for auction. So this idea that he's an abolitionist is ridiculous. Now, let me back up a little bit. This happened as an accident. I was coming to Washington because the National Gallery was going to show a film that we made in New York in 1980 and 81, directed by Bill Gunn, and now it's considered a classic. There was a government shutdown. So I'd spent all this money on airline travel, Amtrak, hotels. I said, how am I going to get this back? Amtrak at least gave me a refund. So we've been working with the same actors for about 2 plays before this one. I asked Neal, the great director at the Nuyorican Poets Cafe, to round up some of these actors to read from the script that I was writing as a rebuttal to Hamilton the Revolution. We had 4 readings, sold-out audiences, standing ovations, very enthusiastic reviews. They were mixed New Yorker, New York Times 3 times, just all over the world. So there was a hunger for somebody to take this on. And so after we finished that reading, we did a full production in June, which brought more crowds, more recognition. So now we're doing it in October, and we're going to continue to do it until they shut that thing down, because it is poisoning the minds of thousands of students.
Now, I mean, this is one of the biggest hits on Broadway, and it's making a fortune. Mm-hmm. And you mean to tell me there are that many people out there who really care that it's not accurate?
Well, I mean, they're nervous because the first night, they know they're wrong, because the first night they sent a spy. The person got up and asked me, had I seen the play? I said, no, I read the book. I haven't seen King Lear either, but I read the book. I know what the story's about. And as a matter of fact, I quote from LinManuel Miranda's book in the play. So finally there was this sort of like, it went viral, the fact that I hadn't seen the play. So I finally saw it in San Francisco. HBO Vice News did a story about my seeing it. And I changed the script to make it even look worse, mm-hmm. because they lying on the stage. Mm-hmm. They say, for example, for Hamilton, New York, you could become a new man. They've been massacring black people in this town since the 1700s, all the way from, for example, a 19-year-old black girl was hanged in Washington Square Park, mm-hmm. for setting her slave master's house on fire. because the arson was a weapon that the slaves used as a weapon to get even or to retaliate to the cruel slave masters. So not only did she set the house on fire, she locked the door so they couldn't get out. They hanged her in Washington Square Park. There was a massacre of black people in the 1860s, the draft riots. In 1901, there was a massacre of black people because the police were treating black women like prostitutes. Mm-hmm. And this woman's boyfriend got upset that his girlfriend was not honored or respected. He killed a cop. There was 1,000 people participated in the Tenderloin riots in 1901. That's when there was a Jewish Black Alliance. That was the beginning of Jewish Black Alliance because they were beating up Jews too in New York. So all the way from the 1700s all the way up to Eric Garner. Now you saw the head of the Police Patrolmen's Association. He said, we've been getting away with this for 200 years. What's changed? We've been killing black people, massacring them, so what's changed? So New York is a perfect place for a musical like Hamilton to make headway because black lives don't matter in New York. That's 200, 300 years they haven't mattered. So we got a big backlash on our protests. Some of the most learned people, some of the brightest and best people jumping on our case. That's because they've been educated to be Europeans. They don't know anything about American history. So my indictment has become worse or harsher as I revise the script. So what we have in our play, we have indentured servants. There used to be alliances between indentured servants and blacks. Some of the big rebellions. Right. Well, before they went white. The Irish went white. Some of the others went white. They crossed over into whiteness. So there have been alliances there. So we have indentured servant. We have two of the slaves that were sold or merchandised by Hamilton. We have Native Americans. They leave Native Americans out. Native Americans don't even enter the discussion. But both George Washington and Hamilton's policy toward Native Americans was extermination. George Washington used the term extirpation. So we have George Washington. He's played by Robert Turner, black actor. That's our idea of traditional non-casting, non-traditional casting. So all these truths are spelled out there. So now they done backed up. They had this fiasco, or shall we call it a debacle, in Chicago where they had a traveling museum dedicated to Hamilton. It was a big old flop. They had to close it down. But the sales pitch then was that Hamilton was opposed to slavery. I found out last month that Hamilton was opposed to the Haitian Revolution. Okay, the Miami Herald had a newspaper story saying, why doesn't Hamilton include, the Haitian Revolution? Because there was a fight for independence. Well, he was opposed to the Haitian Revolution. He sided with the slave masters. Now, how can somebody who sold slaves, purchased them for this awful Schuyler family, lived in Albany, and was against the Haitian Revolution, be opposed to slavery? So they're going to have to change their story again.
Let me ask you something. The way you did this, the haunting of the playwright, that was a unique way of coming at something. So tell me, who is he being haunted by?
Well, these speakers, the slaves, the indentured servant, they educate him. A lot of people say, now see, they accuse me of not seeing Hamilton and making comments. They haven't seen my play, yet they make comments about it. So they say we'd be unfair to LinManuel Miranda. No, we're not blaming him. We're blaming the historian, Ron Chernow. We have him as a character.
Because his play is actually based on his biography.
But even see, there's a little opportunism on the part of LinManuel Miranda, even though we give him sort of like victim status. Ron Chernow even says that Hamilton and his wife Eliza Schuyler might have owned slaves. But he says if they owned them, well, all those people were against slavery, but they all held slaves. They're all opposed to slavery, but they held slaves. So even Chernow says that. So we believe that Broadway has to stop glorifying our Hitlers. Andrew Jackson. They had a thing called Bloody, Bloody Andrew. Now, my new novel called Conjugating Hindi, which is being ignored here, but is being reviewed by Pakistani and Indian critics. I talk about how Native Americans protested against Bloody Andrew, but their protests don't count. And Andrew Jackson, who was the current president's hero, he's got paintings of him in the White House and everything, tried to exterminate the Creek Indians. They were butchered. And that's how the United States got the state of Alabama, 28 million acres, because they defeated the Creek. And then he's also like the Eichmann of Indian policy. He was charged with the Indian removal. I mean, Thomas Jefferson was the one who wanted them removed, but Andrew Jackson carried it out. See, whenever they get in trouble, whenever they find a president is too feminine, they bring the Celts. So what's his name? President Obama is considered feminine, right? So they bring in this guy, a Celt, a thug, who will, use cruel measures to get his way.
Is Mr. Miranda a villain or just uninformed, stupid?
He is informed, and at the end of the play...
Informed?
Well, he's informed by the characters.
Oh no, I'm saying to haunt him. I mean, why? Why you want to haunt him? Is he a villain? This
No,
is
he's
what
not
I'm
a
asking
villain.
you.
He's
Or
not
is
a
he
villain.
just somebody who...
Naive.
Naive.
I think he's an opportunist. I think he went for the money. He's getting paid 60 times the amount of money the actors are getting paid. I mean, the black and Latinx actors, they carry that thing. Nobody listens to those lyrics he wrote. The dancing and singing keeps the thing going. But they're not getting paid. He gets paid. Ron Cherno's getting paid. And the investors, which read like a who's who of Wall Street, the Rockefellers are backing this thing. They're making 600% profit on this thing. So, one of the lines in there is, do you think the Rockefellers are for a revolution? Hamilton the Revolution? The Rockefellers bought 20,000 tickets for school kids. This Gilda Lerman Foundation bought 22,000 tickets. So I wrote all the officers on the Gilda Lerman. I said, why don't you buy some tickets for kids to go see my play so they can get another point of view, get an alternative history. Now, Diana Ross's grandson showed up, and he said, thank you for teaching me history. We need more kids to go see my version, like the ones who went to see the Hamilton the Revolution. Let me tell you about Puerto Rico. Puerto Rican students protested against Miranda when he went down there. There was a protest. It made maybe a paragraph in the newspaper because the media loves this thing. It's bringing in a lot of revenue. We got one of our worst reviews in the New York Times. They're getting a big revenue stream over this thing. I think there's
I
a
didn't
connection.
read it. What did they say?
Well,
What
they were
was
just
in it?
saying. She said it was not engaging. I mean, you got
Said your play
it
wasn't
was
it?
not engaging. You got people. Look, I gotta we do the kind of theater they did in New York in the 1800s. The people get up and talk back to the characters. They get up and make comments. It's raucous. Hamilton called people like us rabble. So this is a rabble play, rabble playwright, rabble director, rabble cast, and a rabble audience. They get up and talk back. You do that on Broadway, they call the cops on you. You get up in Porgy and Bess and start talking to the people on the stage, they'll call security. So we got the old traditional downtown peasant theater that people should come down and come see this play. There's some humor in it. I mean, it's not all grim. I got some comic lines in there that people like to laugh at. But the point is, Jamaicans have a thing called serious comedy, like Mighty Sparrow. There was a calypso. You read that calypso, you see it's got humor in it, but it's serious. It makes serious points.
So artists have some kind of
We don't like
role.
we don't like them mocking Martin Luther King.
Huh?
We don't like them mocking Martin Luther King and praising slave owners and Indian fighters. They did this thing called Mountaintop. I don't know if you saw that.
No.
A disgrace. They had Martin Luther King joshing around and doing a pillow fight and making lecherous advances toward this maid on the weekend that they unveiled the statue. Now they're talking about the FBI's got these tapes they're going to release in 2027. Probably doctored tapes that show Martin Luther King in unfavorable light because they want to take away that holiday. But they did a play called Mountaintop, and one of the producers went to court with Willie Allen. He accused her of taking his money. So, you know, they did that as an insult. So Broadway's got to, we got to vigorously reply. We ain't got no money. I don't have no money. I put $5,000 up for that reading. They got. Then they sent a spy. She comes there. Next thing I know, I find out she's on a payroll. She getting paid. I don't want to mention the name because she's a very distinguished historian. I admire her very much. You know, I admire her, and she's written an excellent book, 2 good books. But they sent her the first night, and she asked me a hostile question. So she said, well, how can there be a compromise? How can there be a compromise between our version and Miranda's version? Well, you know, I thought I had a publisher. We may still have a publisher. I want my script delivered to as many students as the script for Hamilton was delivered. So now we got some traction. Toronto, they're going to bring us up there. When Hamilton opens up, Harry Truman used to have a thing called a Truth Squad. So we want to go everywhere Hamilton is, we want to follow with the truth.
The audience of Link is all ages, and I'm telling you right now that when young folks they're looking at you right now on Sunday, they're proud of you because you're raising hell for something righteous, and I just want to thank you on their behalf. They're not here.
Well,
I know how they're feeling, and I think our young artists today need to see you. They need to know what you're doing, and they need to know that we care for them. So many of them feel like our generation. I'm still in your generation.
Oh, you're younger than I am. I'm the oldest person here in this room.
Good, and
I'm the oldest person in this building. I bet you.
And I'm next. but what a lot of them feel like we did our thing, as they say, in the '60s, and then dropped the baton or left them, and I'm glad you're here to let them know it's not true.
No, I mean people abandon this idea of a messianic leader, and things are dispersed now. Like in my town, you know, people take care of their neighborhoods. You know, we have a neighborhood watch. There's an article in a new magazine about how my family and I, were confronted drug dealers and crack dealers in our neighborhood, and where there were shootouts, and try to organize it. I think that kind of thing is happening all over. People no longer want a man or a woman on horseback to solve everything.
I'd like you to. I asked you a few minutes ago about the playwright, if he was a villain or just ignorant. Could you just make a statement about the responsibility of an artist, whether they're writers, painters, or whatever, to be informed and not to just, I mean, he picked up a biography and wrote a play based on that biography, but what is the responsibility of an artist?
Well, I don't think he wanted too much. I don't think that he cared that much for or paid that much attention to the text. I think what he wanted was a musical, and that's what he was aiming at, the Broadway musical. But I think all of us are victims of a colonial education, and it's taken me decades to unlearn all this stuff. Like, you know, I grew up admiring Jesse James because that's what we were fed in the movies, right? And Thomas Jefferson. And until I did the research, the person who turned me on to Black history was Malcolm X, whom I met in 1960. Malcolm X is the father of Black studies. He didn't live long enough to fulfill his promise, but his followers, Bobby Seale, Askia Torre, Sonia Sanchez, people like that, inaugurated Black studies. He's the father of Black studies. The late Sarah Fabio, who taught Huey Newton, who taught David Hilliard, and who taught Bobby Seale, she's the mother of Black studies. So we didn't have Black studies. You know, I had to learn about Black history in the streets when I was a kid. I got a book called J.A. Rogers, 100 Facts About the Negro. I was in 4th or 5th grade. I took it to school. The teacher said it was nonsense, that all these claims were nonsense. So we had to unlearn a lot of stuff. So he's just a victim of a colonial education. And Chernow, biographers and historians like that, whose idea of American history is a series of godlike white men. Those people were slave owners. They were cruel to their slaves. You know, they would be at The Hague if they were around now. George Washington treated his slaves like animals. You know, he'd raffle off black children to pay his debts. So you really have to really go into the weeds to really understand American history and find that the atrocities, the genocide that's been committed, which is being paved over or whitewashed by these official intellectuals. But one more thing, this drive against Hamilton was begun by women.
I'm sorry?
This criticism of Hamilton began with women.
Really?
Leroy Montanaro at Rutgers, Nancy Eisenberg, and Michelle DeRoss at University of New York at Albany. They're the ones who began this. But what they did was they published in out-of-the-way places, hard to get. It's because of our play that their work has surfaced. So what's happening in the American historical establishment is women and blacks, Latinx and other historians are challenging the old boys who worship mass murderers like Robert E. Lee. My new book is called Why No Confederate Statues in Mexico. Not many people know this, but Jefferson Davis, Robert E. Lee, all were down there in Mexico. They slaughtered and massacred people before they started this war. They were killers even before they started the Civil War. Not many people know that, but that's my new book of essays. I couldn't get it published in the United States. It's published in Montreal, which is where in 1856, fugitive slaves went to Canada to write and say things that they couldn't say down here. Our voices and our narrative is very restricted down here. It's very little that gets passed. I think like white men have a better opportunity, and some of them do a good job. I got a bunch of alternative historians in my library, but white men are the ones who do The Wire, The Deuce, the TV shows, this new thing called Godfather in Harlem, all that's, so they tell our stories. It's very rare that somebody like me can tell a story.
Mr. Reed, where's your play playing? Tell us the name.
Well, we're down at the Nuyorican Poets Cafe. I've had about 8 plays done down there. And it's at 236 East 3rd Street between B and C. And the great we are nominated for 3 Delcos already. We have an actress, we have Rod Spox does Harriet Tubman. I mean, showstopper, the way she does Harriet Tubman. Harriet Tubman also teaches Miranda, so he gets an education. And she's been nominated. Our costume designer's been nominated. And our actor who plays George Washington has been nominated. So we have a multiracial cast and have some great actors. Jesse Bueno plays Miranda.
And the director again?
So Robert Turner plays George Washington. He's been in about 4 of my plays. And he plays, it's not the Mount Rushmore. You see, when we get rid of all the Confederate statues, we got to bring some of these guys down from Mount Rushmore. That'll complete the job. I want to put Warren Harding up there because Warren Harding was a lover. Have you read his love letters? Okay, Warren. I said all you need is a bass and Johnny Mathis, man. You can sing Warren Harding. I said put a lover up there on Mount Rushmore.
Mr. Reed, October 4th to October 27th, the Nuyorican Poets
Friday,
Cafe.
Saturday at 7 o'clock, Sundays at 3 until the 27th of October.
I thank you. Anything I didn't ask you?
No, you're one of the best interviewers that, I've had, and I like the way you manage the aesthetics of the setting here.
And I like the way you just walked into this studio and did this interview like that. I didn't even have to stand on my head. Thank you so much,
Thank you.
Mr. Reed.
Thank you very much.
Good night, everybody, and join us on Lincoln. Please get down to the Nuyorican
Poets Cafe.
236 East 3rd Street, between Avenue B and Avenue C. Link is produced by me, La-Verne Cody Gittens. The associate producer for this show is the incomparable Agundape Fayomi, and our director is Nat Wood. Corey Bryce is our facilitator, and we are at Manhattan Neighborhood Network. Thank you so much for joining us on Link.